Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Fostering a love of reading will help to foster a love of learning.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson, the author of 6 books, soon to be 7.
You're such a tease.
About raising happy families. I'm very excited. I'm writing.
Yes, you are, because you usually get to have a sabbatical when you write a book. You leave me with the kids.
You make it sound like it's. I'm working hard when I write these books. You don't know how much pain I go through to write a book.
You do not know how much pain I go through when you write a book. Yes.
The person opposite me complaining about having the children that we've had. We're the parents of 6 daughters, by the way, is my wife. And for today, maybe not ever again, my podcast partner. Kylie, Mrs. Happy Families, as we affectionately know you on the podcast and on our Facebook page. Hey, we've got a brand new segment today. We've been thinking about ways that we can communicate really great science that's coming out to help families to be happier. And we've come up with this idea. We've decided to call it...
I think you've come up with this idea. I think this is a Geek Out Hour. Just letting you all know. If you're on my team, right. This is Geek Out. Geek Out Hour with Dr. Justin.
What you're saying is you think I'm trying to flex, don't you?
Let's be serious for a second. You are actually really, really good at teasing out the information that's needed for the average mum and dad from all of those big words that you like to use in academia that just hurt my head.
Okay, so the segment is called From the Doctor's Desk. And essentially what we're doing is academics don't do a great job. We're getting better at it, but academics don't do a great job of taking the science discoveries that we make in our fancy universities and bringing that into the mainstream so that people can really get access to the very best information to improve their lives. And so much research exists that can be tremendously helpful, but it takes years for it to be understood properly and then to make its way into textbooks and then to make its way into university courses and then for people to understand. And the idea of From the Doctor's Desk, this little segment that we're going to do every couple of weeks as research papers make their way across my desk that I think are relevant to you as a Happy Families listener, we're going to talk about them.
So we've got 3 bits of research to talk about today. The first 2 come from the University of South Australia, and they're talking about the relationship that exists between mental health and sleep in our teenagers. And the second one is one for parents with boys. This is really good news. The research is actually suggesting that our boys might actually enjoy reading more than we think. And the third one was a part of a national survey that was published in the Medical Journal of Australia that talks about how the pandemic has actually affected Australian children. So what is the research actually telling us?
The first thing is that sleep is not a luxury item and teenagers treat it like it is. And when I say a luxury item, it's not that they're out there thinking, oh, I need to spend lots of money on my sleep. It's like a luxury item is one of those things that you can live without. You know, you buy your luxuries when you've got the capacity for them. And the research is saying really clearly, no, sleep is not a luxury item. This comes from, as you mentioned, the University of South Australia. Dr. Alex Agostini and Stephanie Centofanti have said, and I quote, research shows that teenagers need at least 8 hours of sleep each night. Without this, they're less able to deal with stresses such as bullying or social pressures, and they run the risk of developing behavioural problems as well as anxiety and depression. And then they make this point, again, this is a direct quote, if sleep drops to less than 6 hours a night, research shows that teens are twice as likely to engage in risky behaviours such as dangerous driving, marijuana, alcohol or tobacco use, risky sexual behaviour and other aggressive or harmful activities. In some ways, this is not brand new research, but it's a really important reminder. And what the data does seem to be telling us is that sleep is being displaced at the moment in our teenagers, and it's probably no surprise what it's mainly being displaced by.
I have to believe that screens play a huge part in this.
And parents of tweens and teens are consistently emailing me and writing in and saying, how do we get our kids off the screen so that they'll go to sleep? It's not necessarily that the screens are bad as screens. They're not necessarily bad for kids. It's what they take our children away from. And for teenagers, when I'm in and out of schools talking about all the different stuff that I talk about when I visit schools, something that I'll often ask is, how many hours of sleep are you getting? And I'll just get them to put up their hand and leave it up. And I'll start at 9 and then 8 and 7 and 6. And there's often, 4 50% of kids are saying that they're getting 6 hours or less per night. I mean, I can't survive on that.
I can't function.
I'm a zombie. And the research again shows that when you don't get enough sleep, your willpower is reduced, your morality is reduced, your capacity to say no to things you need to say no to is reduced.
I just turn into Tyrannosaurus Rex, I think.
Yeah, because you're not a teenager. But when you're a teenager, it turns into this hyper risky behavior. Like I said, teens are at twice the risk of engaging in those dangerous and delinquent behaviors when they're getting less than 6 hours sleep a night. It's a really big risk factor.
So before we go on to number 2, is there one take home that we can give to parents in relation to this research?
Yeah, really important question. I think the one take home is if your kids are not getting enough sleep, you need to go through my 3 E's of effective discipline. That is, you need to explore what's going on with them, explain what your expectations are and why, and empower them to work with you to come up with really good solutions that are going to help everybody to be healthier and happier. I talk about it a lot more online. You can get the articles for free. Look up the 3 E's of effective discipline, or grab my book like Misconnection, Why Your Teenage Daughter Hates You, Expects the World, and Needs to Talk. I talk to you very, very clearly about how we can get that discipline right. But please don't try to have that conversation at 10:30 at night when everybody's tired. It's a recipe for disaster.
So piece number 2, this is for parents of boys. This is exciting. We've actually finding out that our boys might actually like reading.
So I've been saying this for years, not necessarily with the research to back it, but a lot of parents will say, oh, yeah, my boys, they just hate reading. I can't get them into books. And my response has always been, you just have to find the right book. And what this research has showed is that that's pretty much it. First of all, the research has found that, and this again was University of South Australia researchers, as you said, and they published it in the British Educational Research Journal. They found not only do boys love to read, but they actually love to read fiction. And that runs counter to the common assumption in education, especially, that boys prefer non-fiction. A lot of people think that boys want to read books about, I don't know, cars or dinosaurs or, about real stuff, and girls like all the fiction. But if you can get the right fiction book, boys love to read.
It kind of reminds me of The Princess Bride. You know, that opening scene where Grandpa comes and visits. What's his name? What's the little boy's name?
Fred Savage. I can't remember what his name is.
Fred Savage in the movie.
But he was the guy in The Wonder Years, and now he's in The Princess Bride. I can't remember what his name is in the Princess Bride. Best movie ever. I love The Princess Bride.
Well, Grandpa comes over with a book because he's sick.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's looking at it
Grandpa.
like, oh, and it's called The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, oh, please don't tell me there's going to be kissing in it and all of that kind of stuff. But Grandpa says, all right, well, we'll just give it a go. So he starts reading the book, and the grandson, I wish I knew his name, he keeps stopping him and going, oh, Grandpa, do I have to listen to this? I mean, seriously, he's really, really just taken back by all of this. But sooner or later, he gets completely hooked. And Grandpa goes, you know what? I think you've had enough. We're not going to read anymore. And he's like, no, it's okay. I'm all right. And he just has to hear the whole story. And I think that whole thing that we're talking about is just engaging our kids in things that they really can enjoy and become immersed in.
So I've just done a quick Google while you were sharing that. And the character that Fred Savage plays in The Princess Bride is grandson. Grandson? He actually doesn't have a name.
Really?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that doesn't make it very easy to tell a story, does it?
No, not if you're reaching for the name. So that's the second piece of research. So the take-home message is, number 1, you've just got to find the right book. And number 2, read with your boys and your girls. Reading is so strongly associated with academic outcomes. Reading is so strongly associated with the ability that we have to connect as parents with our kids. It's just such a wonderful way to spend our evenings with our children. Fostering a love of reading will help to foster a love of learning. And so this research is, I think, a great comfort to parents who have boys who maybe thought, oh, there's no hope, they don't like reading. Just get them involved. They'll find something and it'll work.
I think that one of the biggest challenges we have is that we often think that our children have to do the reading themselves to learn to love it. But what we've experienced in our home is that reading with them is the greatest way to involve them and engage them.
Up next, we're going to talk about how the pandemic has affected Australian children.
It's the Happy Families Podcast.
For a happier family, try a Happy Families membership, because a happy family doesn't just happen. Details at happyfamilies.com.au.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. And today we are letting Dr. Justin Coulson geek out a little bit with the research.
Yep, it's from the doctor's desk. And the third bit of research that I want to highlight has come from the Medical Journal of Australia. This is data that has surveyed the nation and had a look at how our children have fared during the pandemic. And in a nutshell, what the data is showing is that we have a growing need on what is already a fairly substantial problem, and that is that the mental health of our young people is declining, and the argument is that COVID has made it worse.
Do you really think that COVID has made it worse?
Yeah, and I think that certain areas of the nation are going to be affected worse. Now, I haven't been able to look carefully at the breakdown, but this data is reflected not just in the Medical Journal of Australia, but I had a look at a brand new paper that was published recently looking at 2020 data from Headspace, who do lots and lots of work with young people. And what it demonstrated, what it showed, I should say, was that about 1 in 2 of our young people now between 12 and 24, 1 in 2 of them are indicating that they're experiencing higher than normal levels, elevated levels of mental distress. And if you're in Melbourne, particularly, the data seems to be pointing to, the more severe the lockdown and the more constrained people have been, the more likely it is that this is going to affect them.
So what were the numbers before the pandemic, before this research? Because my understanding, based on lots of conversations we've had over the time, is that there has been a significant decline in our children's wellbeing and mental health for some time now. We've
been watching this become a bigger and bigger problem over the last couple of decades, certainly over the last 10 to 15 years. Jean Twenge from San Diego University consistently points to iGeneration, since the iPhone became ubiquitous from about 2012. That's where we've really seen the precipitous drops and the major challenges. I don't think it's fair or appropriate to blame it entirely on screens. I think that we have a society that is increasingly unkind to children and to families. For a variety of reasons, we now almost require parents to be both in the workforce, children to be in higher levels of, have longer hours in care than ever before. There's more academic pressure on children at a younger age. There's also, because of the way society works, more isolation for children than there's ever been before. They don't just get on their bikes and ride down to the park and hang out with their friends after school. And we're also sending more kids to private schools, which means that the neighborhood doesn't exist like it used to. Everyone used to go to the neighborhood school. That doesn't happen anymore. And the list keeps on going and going. So I don't think we can just put it onto the iPhone and say that it's because of technology, although it's probably contributing. I think that that's reasonable to hold that position. And I know, by the way, that what I've just said is kind of provocative. And a lot of people are sort of going, well, what else am I supposed to do? I don't survive unless I go to work. And yes, that does mean my kids have to be in outside of school hours care and so on. I'm not pointing any fingers. What I'm saying is society is horrible. And COVID has only exacerbated that by requiring families to be stuck at home and by removing these social outlets that they may previously have had. So the data is in, and more children than ever before are struggling from a mental health perspective. And while the data doesn't highlight answers, I think that there's probably a couple that I could share that might be useful if that's your family.
You've suggested that there's 4 things that you might share with us that would help.
Yeah, the first one is just build relationships back up. The quality of our children's connections and the joy that they experience from regular face-to-face contact with trusted friends that they connect with is going to do more than thousands of dollars worth of therapy. It's so important. Or if therapy is needed because things are really serious, those social connections and those relationships will restore well-being much faster. Second, get them physically active. Movement is incredible in terms of the scientifically demonstrated positive impact that it has on well-being. Even if we can make that movement happen with people, that way we get to build connection and physical well-being. So that's doubly good. Third thing, I reckon, get your kids involved in a passion project. If there's something that they're right into, whether it's art or music, or they want to create something, or it might be something religious, or it could be sporty, whatever it is, get them involved in some kind of a project, ideally with other people, but even if it's solo, so long as they've got your support, that's going to be good for them. It gives them purpose. It gives them meaning. And lastly, help them to find a way to make a difference in someone's life. When they realize that the best way to be happy is sometimes just to stop worrying about yourself and your stuff and go and make a difference for somebody else. Find a cause. It might be the environment. It could be poverty. It could be homelessness. It might be equality, whatever it is, and get involved. They're my 4 big ideas.
There's some really great ideas. Can we do a quick review on our take-home messages for today? Because there's been a few.
Yeah, from the doctor's desk, number one, when it comes to teens and sleep, they need to get enough sleep. And it's up to you as a parent to have a gentle conversation when they're not tired about how you can make sure that everybody's healthy, safe, and happy, because the risks of not sleeping enough are significant.
Number two?
Secondly, we talked about boys and reading, and it's really simple. Read with your kids, whether they're boys or girls. And if they say, I don't like reading, say, okay, well, that's fine. Let's see if we can find a book that you would be interested in and read to them. Spend that time building the connection. They will fall in love with reading if you spend the time. The research is there that shows it.
And finally?
Number three, from the doctor's desk, wellbeing has taken a hit for a lot of people because of the pandemic. Wellbeing was already taking a hit before it, and the data is now in. It's especially impactful for some of our young people. And so if they're struggling, make sure that they get connected with other people. Make sure that they're physically active. Help them to find a passion project or find some meaning or purpose, something to get curious about or invest in their lives. And lastly, see if there's something that they can give back to other people and forget themselves.
Well, if you've enjoyed the podcast, be sure to leave a review at Apple Podcasts. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, those ratings and reviews help other people to find out about the podcast and make their family happier. And you can also email us directly, podcasts, that's podcasts with an S, at happyfamilies.com.au. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media, and our executive producer is Craig Bruce. We really appreciate the hard work that they put in to make sure that the podcast sounds way better once it's been edited than it sounded when we recorded it. And if you'd like more information about how you can make your family way better, jump onto happyfamilies.com.au. We've got this amazing membership where you get ongoing week-to-week, month-to-month support from me and from Kylie so that your family can thrive and flourish. All the details for becoming a Happy Families member at happyfamilies.com.au.